Hi, Domenica here from easysewingforbeginners.com. In this video I'll be showing you how to make a pin cushion for your wrist. Okay, so in this first step I've cut my fabric to 7.5 by 11 inches and I've given it a press with the iron just to get most of the creases out. So what we need to do now is we need to cut two 3.5 inch squares, and these will form the cushion for the pin cushion. So I already know these edges are straight, so I'm just going to line them up with the lines on my ruler, the 3.5 inches. And then I need to cut them into squares, so they're 3.5 by 3.5. Okay, and then my next step is to cut my strip for the strap of the wrist pin cushion. So it needs to be 3.5 inches wide. And then 10.5 inches long. There you have it. We're ready for step 2. Okay, in this next step, you'll need to take your strip of fabric, and what you need to do is fold it in half lengthways. And then what I do next is just mark where I'm going to leave my opening using double pins. And this way I won't accidentally sew my opening closed. I'll probably leave my opening to be about maybe 2.5 inches. And then just use a few more pins to hold the fabric edges together. Okay, now your strap's ready to sew. Okay, so now we're ready to sew around the edge of our strap. I've got the sewing machine set to a straight stitch and 2.6 stitch length. And I'm going to sew this seam using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to place my fabric under the foot there as close to the top edge as possible. Now, one reason why I'm using my walking foot here is sometimes when you're sewing close to the edge, it can gather up and catch the fabric. So the feed dogs in the walking foot help to avoid this. Alright, so I'm going to put my needle down, I'm going to sew a couple of stitches and then reverse stitch. Okay, so when I'm about 1/4 inch away from the bottom edge of the strap here, I'm going to make sure my needle is down. If your needle's not down, you just might need to use your hand wheel. I'm going to lift my presser foot up and pivot the fabric, and off I go. Okay, so now I'm up to my double pin, so this tells me this is where I'll need to leave the opening for turning. So I'm just going to remove those double pins. and then just back stitch just to reinforce the edges of the opening there. Now I'm going to lift my needle up, press it forward up, and I'm just going to pull that fabric through to the next set of double pins. Take those pins out, put my needle down, off I go. I'm going to back stitch just to reinforce the other side. Okay, when I reach the bottom edge, just back stitch again. Okay, now we have it. We're ready for the next step. Okay, so in this next part of the step, we need to make sure all our threads are snipped off there. And we just need to do the threads at the opening. And then just with your fabric scissors, I'm going to snip off the corners, just being careful not to snip through the sewing thread there. And this will give you a nice corner when you turn it right side out. Okay, now with this bit here, I'm going to turn the strap right side out using my stuffing tool, but you could probably do this just by hand and with a chopstick or a pencil or something to push the corners out. So turn it right side out there, and just while I've got the stick in there, just use that to gently push your corners out. Okay, with the next side, put your tube on the inside. Use that stuffing tool. And then again, push the corners out. Okay. Now the next part of this step, you need to just give it a press with the iron, and then we're going to take it back over to the sewing machine to do a top stitch. Okay, so now we're ready to do the top stitch on our strap. So I'm just keeping it at a 2.6 stitch length, and I'm putting it under the foot, probably around about the middle of the strap. And I want to leave probably about 1/8 of a gap from the edge of the fabric to where the sewn thread will be. So I'm just going to move my needle across until it's about 1/8 away from the edge. Okay, when you're happy with where it is, pop the needle down, do a reverse stitch, go. Okay, get to the corner, just make sure your needle's down, doing a pivot, off we go. Okay, when you get back to the beginning, just reverse stitch, and I'm done. So now I just need to trim my threads off, and we're ready for the next step. Okay, so now that we've top stitched our strap, we're going to get ready to sew our Velcro on. So I've cut 3.5 inches of the soft part of the Velcro. So what I'm going to do, just going to just pin it in place for now on one end of the strap, and then on the other end of the strap, but on the opposite side, I'm going to pin on the scratchy part of the Velcro, and this one's only about an inch long. Okay, and then we're ready to take it over to the sewing machine, ready to sew on. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew the Velcro onto the strap. So I've put my needle back into the middle and I'm keeping it on a 2.6 stitch length. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and sew the Velcro about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the Velcro, making sure it's in the middle of the strap as best I can. Got it in place. I'm going to pop my needle down and do a reverse stitch just to secure it in place there. Okay. When you get back to the beginning, do a few stitches and then reverse stitch it just to secure it in place there. Okay, that end's done. And so on the other end, but on the opposite side, going to sew in the scratchy Velcro. Reverse stitch. And then reverse stitch just to finish that one off as well. Okay, then we just need to trim the threads and the strap is done. Now if you like to match your thread up, you might like to change your top thread to a white just so you can't see that thread as much, but it doesn't bother me, so I've just left it the same colour.